My brother, Isaac, laughed at me at our grandmother's funeral. I stood up to speak, 40 people watching. The words caught. They always caught. She loved this fam. And Isaac covered his mouth with his fist. One gesture. The room followed him. Grandma Ruth was 10 feet away, in a casket she paid for herself. Now you know who Isaac Wilson is. Wilson and Sons Funeral Home, Sorrow, Mississippi. Our grandmother Ruth built it from scratch in 1958, borrowed hearse, rented storefront. By the time she died, 3 locations, 4 counties, a name everybody in the Deep South knew. Sons. She had 1 son. He had 2 kids, Isaac and me. You already know which one that name was for. Our parents died when I was 19. Car accident. Isaac inherited the business. I got a college fund that lasted 18 months. So I came home, and Isaac handed me a role he called an opportunity. Jasmine, help at the front desk. Jasmine, help with arrangements. Just help. I did everything in that building. Grief counseling, embalming, death certificates at 2 a.m. His salary, $210,000. Mine, $31,000. I lived above the funeral home with a broken radiator and thin walls. Every time I asked for a real title, Isaac would say, patient, slow, Jazz, you know how you get when things are stressful. He never said, Stutter. He didn't need to. He'd spent years making sure every person in Sorrow County had witnessed it themselves. Christmas, 2022. 14 family members. Cornbread dressing, candlelight. Isaac stood after dinner. Wilson Funeral Home got nominated for the Mississippi Small Business Excellence Award, and I'm joining the County Economic Board. Uncle Darrell, that's what I'm talking about. Aunt Bernice crying, Leonard would be so proud. Then Isaac looked at me. And Jasmine, his warm, closed-door smile, has been doing a real good job answering phones. Someone laughed. Under the table, a hand found mine. Grandma Ruth, 81, going thin, but her grip was iron. She squeezed once. I looked up. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Isaac. That expression on her face wasn't sadness. It was decision. 2 weeks later, she called. Come Tuesday, baby. I need to show you something. I went. I didn't know that Christmas dinner had already started something Ruth had been quietly building for me that Isaac didn't know existed. March 2024. My phone buzzed. Jasmine, your role is being transitioned. April 30th. See me. Isaac. I was standing in the embalming room when I read that. Calvin, our head mortician, looked up at my face and set down his tools. Baby girl, what happened? Isaac wasn't transitioning my role. He was erasing me, before I could become a problem. What he didn't know, Ruth had made a phone call to an attorney in Jackson 2 years before she died. That attorney had been waiting for exactly this moment. The attorney's name was Claudette Morris. She called me the same evening Isaac sent that text. I didn't know her, never heard her name, but she knew mine. Ms. Wilson, my name is Claudette Morris. Morris & Webb, attorneys at law, Jackson, Mississippi. I represented your grandmother Ruth for the last 6 years of her life. She left instructions. I've been waiting for a specific moment to contact you. I sat down on my apartment floor, above the funeral home, above the room where we kept the dead. What kind of instructions? The kind, Claudette said, that required me to wait until Isaac made his move. We met the next morning, 2-hour drive to Jackson. I borrowed Calvin's car because mine needed a belt and I hadn't had the $200 to fix it. Claudette Morris was 50-something, natural silver locks, the kind of stillness that comes from spending decades in rooms where everything is at stake. She shook my hand and didn't smile yet, not because she was cold, but because what she had to say didn't deserve a smile first. She slid a document across the desk. Your grandmother's will, the real one, executed March 3rd, 2022, 14 months before she passed. I looked at the date, started reading. The letters didn't swim for me the way they do for some people. My problem isn't reading, it's speaking, but my hands were shaking enough that the pages moved. I found my name halfway down. To my granddaughter, Jasmine Ruth Wilson, I leave controlling interest, 51%, of Wilson Family Funeral Services, LLC, inclusive of all 3 locations, all vehicles, all property, and all voting rights therewith. I read it again and again. There's a passage, Claudette said quietly. She wanted you to hear it. She turned the page and pointed. This bequest is made because I have watched my granddaughter work that building with her hands and her heart for years, without recognition, without fair pay, without so much as her name on the door. Jasmine does not stutter because she is slow. Jasmine stutters because she has spent her whole life being talked over. I am correcting that now. A sound came out of me I wasn't prepared for. Not crying exactly, something older than crying. There's a condition, Claudette said, gently but clearly. To activate the bequest, you must call an emergency shareholder meeting within 72 hours of receiving this document. Failure to act, the controlling interest reverts to Isaac under the 2019 will. 72 hours. I looked at the clock on her wall. That means tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. That's your window. I thought about Isaac's text, transitioned, April 30th. I thought about 14 family members laughing at Christmas dinner. I thought about answering phones. I thought about Ruth's hand finding mine under that table, that iron grip. She knew, she saw everything, and she planned for it. Ms. Wilson, Claudette said quietly, your grandmother told me something the day she signed this. She said, Jasmine won't want to fight. She'll want to keep the peace. Tell her the peace was never real. The peace was never real. I'd been keeping a peace that only existed to protect Isaac. What do I need to do? Claudette allowed herself a smile then. Small, certain. I've already drafted the meeting request. I just need your signature. I signed it in her office at 10:47 a.m. By noon, the notice had been formally delivered to Isaac's attorney. By 2 p.m., my phone was ringing. Isaac's name on the screen. Calling, not texting. Isaac never called unless something had gone wrong for him. I watched it ring, watched it stop. Then a text came through. Jasmine, whatever you think you're doing, stop. You have no idea what you're walking into. Call me back now. I put my phone face down on Claudette's desk. For the first time in my life, I let Isaac Wilson wait. Isaac got there first. I walked in and felt it immediately. 7 shareholders, people who'd known me since childhood. They weren't looking at me like someone they were expecting. They were looking at me like someone they'd already been warned about. Isaac sat at the head of the table, relaxed, like he owned it, because until this morning, he did. Robert Tate spoke first, 70 years old, knew Ruth from church. Jasmine, your brother raised some concerns about your capacity. Isaac leaned forward, that smile. I love my sister, but running 3 locations means press conferences, vendor negotiations, public representation. You know how you get, Jas. The room went quiet. That quiet. I knew it my whole life. My throat tightened, mouth opened. Nothing came out. Isaac looked down at his notes, didn't gloat. The silence did it for him. Then Claudette slid a folder to every person at that table. Let's talk about operations. She let them read. I watched their faces shift. 4 years of my work, 11 client families I'd personally retained, 40% of Magnolia Street revenue, all documented, all mine. Isaac, did you know she was managing all of this? She was helping. Helping, Donna Webb said, flatly, for $31,000 a year? Isaac's jaw tightened. I found my voice, small, shaking, but there. I want to read something Ruth wrote. The stutter came. I didn't hide from it. I read slow, every snagged syllable, no apology. Jasmine stutters because she is not slow. Jasmine stutters because she has spent her whole life being talked over. I am correcting that now. Robert Tate took his glasses off. Isaac stared at the table. 5-2. Claudette touched my arm. It carries. Isaac stood, buttoned his jacket, walked past me, stopped. This isn't over. Voice low, just for me. I looked at him. I know, I said, but it's not yours anymore. He left. I was the last Wilson standing in that room. Isaac moved out of the family house 3 days later, took the furniture, both cars, every piece of equipment he could argue was personally his. Calvin called me from Magnolia Street on a Thursday morning, voice tight. Jasmine, you need to come down here. The embalming equipment was gone. Not borrowed, not relocated, gone. 3 machines, combined value $40,000, loaded onto a truck sometime between midnight and 6 a.m. Isaac's name wasn't on the ownership papers. Ruth had made sure of that. But proving it meant lawyers and time. We had the Henderson funeral in 4 days. Then the calls started. Reverend Moss, the Beaumont family, the Tates. One by one, families who'd used Wilson for decades, calling to say they'd made other arrangements. Polite, apologetic, but firm. Calvin found out why. Isaac had gone to every black church in Sorrow County personally, shook hands, sat in pews, told people, gently, concernedly, that Jasmine was overwhelmed, that she meant well, that her condition made high-pressure situations difficult. Her condition. I sat with that word in my car for a long time. He'd spent years building that story. All he'd done now was cash it in. Claudette called that evening. He's trying to starve you out before you're established. Classic move. Make the business fail fast, then contest the will on grounds of mismanagement. Can he do that? He can try. A pause. Jasmine, is there anyone in that community who actually knows what you've done in that building? I thought about Calvin, 30 years with Ruth, hands that taught mine everything they knew. I thought about the 11 families in that file, the ones I'd sat with at 2 a.m., the ones I'd called back when nobody else did. I thought about Donna Webb, the way she'd said $31,000 like it disgusted her. Yes, I said. Then use them. I called Calvin first. You with me? Baby girl, I've been waiting on you to ask. I called every family in that file. Didn't perform, didn't oversell, just told the truth, stutters and all, about what was happening and what I intended to build. 11 calls, 9 callbacks. Then Donna Webb called me. I have a cousin who does mortuary equipment leasing, reasonable rates. How fast do you need it? The Henderson funeral is in 4 days. I'll have someone there tomorrow morning. We held the Henderson service on a Saturday, full house. I stood at the door the way I always had, greeting, directing, holding space for people's grief. Afterward, Mrs. Henderson took both my hands in hers. "Your grandmother used to stand right there, same spot." That evening, Isaac texted, "How'd the Henderson service go?" No question mark, he already knew. I put my phone down without answering, but that night I found something that made my stomach drop. Something in Ruth's original financial records that Claudette hadn't seen yet. Something that meant Isaac's moves hadn't been random. He'd been planning this before Ruth died. Ruth's financial records went back to 2019. I found it at midnight. Kitchen table, Calvin's reading glasses borrowed because mine had broken 2 weeks ago and I hadn't replaced them. 3 years of withdrawals, small enough not to trigger flags, large enough, added together, to mean something. $340,000. Gone. I called Claudette at 6 a.m. She was quiet for a long time after I read her the numbers. "He's been draining the operating accounts," she said, "while Ruth was sick, while she was distracted. Can we prove it? You just did." The shareholder meeting was Claudette's call. Emergency session, same room, First Southern Bank. 2 days later. Isaac showed up with an attorney I didn't recognize. Expensive suit, Jackson briefcase, the kind of lawyer you hire when you know what's coming. He looked at me across the table, and for the first time since this started, he looked tired. Good. Claudette laid it out clean. No drama, just numbers. 31 documented transfers, 3-year period, all routed through a vendor account Isaac controlled personally. The vendor, a supply company out of Memphis, didn't exist. Claudette had checked. "This constitutes financial fraud against Wilson Family Funeral Services and against Ruth Wilson personally during her final years," she said. The room was silent. Robert Tate looked at Isaac, long and slow, the way old men look when something confirms what they already suspected. "Isaac," he said, "did you steal from your grandmother?" Isaac's attorney touched his arm. "Don't. I built that business with her." Robert's voice cracked. "Did you steal from Ruth?" Isaac said nothing. I spoke. Slow, deliberate, every word placed carefully the way I'd learned to do when the stakes were too high for the Stutter to win. He did, and I have every record, every transfer, every fake invoice. I slid the folder to Robert. Ruth knew something was wrong. That's why she changed the will. That's why she called Claudette. She wasn't protecting me from Isaac. I looked directly at my brother. She was protecting her life's work from him. Isaac's attorney requested a recess. They didn't come back. 20 minutes later, Claudette got a call. Isaac would return the $340,000 against a negotiated settlement, no criminal charges pursued by the company, resignation of all remaining claims against the estate. Claudette looked at me. "Your call." I thought about Ruth, what she'd want, what she'd built, what dragging this into criminal court would do to the Wilson name in every county that name meant something. I said, "Take it, but I want it in writing by end of day." Claudette smiled. "Done." Isaac left Sorrow 6 weeks later. I heard he went to Atlanta. Nobody in that building said his name much after that. Calvin stayed. So did the 11 families. So did Donna Webb, who joined the board 3 months later. I repainted the sign outside the Magnolia Street location myself on a Saturday morning. Calvin held the ladder. The old sign said Wilson and Sons. The new one said Wilson Family Funeral Services, established 1958 by Ruth E. Wilson. Her name finally on the doors she built. I stood back and looked at it. Calvin stood beside me. Neither of us said anything for a while. Then he cleared his throat. She'd have something to say about that paint color. I laughed. First real laugh in months. She'd have something to say about everything. "Yeah," Calvin said softly, "she would." I still stutter, probably always will, but I run 3 locations now. I sit at the head of that table. When vendors negotiate with me and I take my time finding a word, I let the silence sit. I don't rush it, I don't apologize for it. Ruth was right. I wasn't slow. I was just never given the room to speak. I have it now. If this story meant something, if you know what it feels like to be talked over, talked around, talked about, comment your name below. You were never the problem. You were just waiting for the room.